Hey, friends, welcome back to the Lifestyle School podcast. I am your host, Hope Black, and if you are new here, this podcast is all about helping you build a life that naturally produces the health and the weight that you want to be at. We're not about crash diets over here. We're not about extremes. We're about understanding your body, working with it, and building habits that actually stick. Because when you understand how your body works, literally everything else changes. Food decisions get simpler, cravings start to make sense, your energy becomes more predictable, and instead of constantly wondering, why isn't this working, you start to see exactly what's happening. And if you're ready to go deeper into this, if you've been listening to the podcast for a while, you know what we're all about here. I want to invite you to check out my course, Lifestyle School for Weight Loss, where I take you step by step through the process of how to regulate your blood sugar to improve your metabolic health, and shift your body into a fat burning state. And if you want an even more personalized support option, my one-on-one coaching program is where we take all of this and apply it specifically to you, your lifestyle, your labs, your goals. So if that interests you at all, head over to my website, www.hopeblackcoaching.com. And I would love to connect with you and see if it would be a good fit. Before we jump in the episode today, though, I wanted to give just a brief personal update, because I have a lot going on in my life. And I do feel like this podcast, I have a lot of you guys reach out and tell me like what you think of the episodes, what you like and whatnot. And so I feel like we're all friends here. And so I feel like I'm talking to my friends, even though, I'm talking and I can't see you. But first of all, I'm going to tell you guys, I am recording this episode. I'm wearing my 3-month-old baby. Little Josiah is doing so great, but he might wake up during the middle of this recording, so I might have to press pause. So that might be something we troubleshoot here. Also, I have the windows open in my office. It's just such a beautiful day here in the Bay Area, and I can't bring myself to close them. We do live by a busy street, so I apologize if there's some car noise in the background, but alas, here we are. So, a little personal update for you guys before we jump into today's episode. I have been having a great time over here, guys. I had essentially my adopted sister from Germany come stay with us for 2.5 weeks. She just took off today. We're so sad to have her leave, but she was my family, like my parents' foreign exchange student a decade ago. I didn't even live at home at the time, but she's also the same age as my youngest sister. And after that year she spent with my family, she essentially became part of the family. And so she's been here for 2.5 weeks. My actual biological sister was here for 4 days of that. And we have just been like going around, hiking, exploring, doing all the fun things. And I will tell you, I have not been practicing what I preach regarding sleep the last couple of days or maybe even week. And I feel so awful, you guys. I need to get more sleep. Last night I was up until past 12, which is absolutely wild for me. I am like usually, as you know, in bed by like 9:30. I was up till after midnight. We were watching a show together and we had to finish it before she left today. And we had to leave our house at like 9:45 to get her to the airport this morning. And we really wanted to do a workout before she left for the airport. So we stayed up super late because we were like gone all day yesterday, hiking around, enjoying just like this beautiful area that we live in, that we're so blessed to live in. And then we got home late, got the kids in bed, and then we had to watch, the episode and a half of the show we were watching. Um, so it was really fun to finish it together. It's like kind of our thing. But then waking up this morning was awful because my baby, who's been sleeping amazing, woke up 2 times last night, you guys. I don't even know. He was like, Mom, I know you went to bed late. I know you're trying to wake up and go work out, so I'm going to wake up 2 times. So alas, I'm here though. We're recording this episode. I'm tired. If I misspeak more than usual, it's because we're living on a prayer and a lot of coffee. Not too much coffee, but enough. Also, if you're wondering from last week's episode if I did indeed make it to my son's soccer practice, I didn't. My husband ended up taking him while I was finishing recording the episode, which I thought would probably happen because I went way longer than I expected and I started later than I was hoping to. So Anyway, we're just, people are like, how's it going with the new baby? And it's like, it's going well, but it's a bit of a circus over here sometimes, and that's just life. And then I do think I told you guys a couple episodes ago about my milk supply this postpartum period. I've typically like had plenty of milk on my nursing journey with my babies. And this fourth time around has just been a little bit different. And I don't really know why. I wish I could figure it out, but there's not always a rhyme or reason to this. But my milk supply has continuously kind of continued to decline. He's still exclusively breastfed, or I should say breast milk fed, but we are starting to more heavily rely on stored milk that I have, and that's almost out. So we are going to be introducing baby formula, which, isn't something that I'm excited about. It's kind of like a process I've had to grieve a little bit. It's like this weird thing of feeling like you can't provide for your baby, but at the end of the day, fed is best, is like what they say. I am trying to be really intentional about like what formula I choose, and I already bought one so I can have it on hand for when that moment arrives, because sometimes it kind of comes out of the blue. But so I can have a formula that I feel like doesn't have a lot of the extra junk in it, that's been tested for heavy metals and like as a third party certified formula, because shockingly, there's like some crazy stuff out there about formula, guys, and we're not going to get into that today. It's not the topic of our podcast, but yeah, that's just something I've been troubleshooting. And I know there's a lot of women out there who can like understand that, and that maybe resonates with. And so it's like, I just want to say that's been like a really hard thing I've been navigating. I feel like I'm doing well now, but it was hard in the moment when I realized like I probably am not going to make it 6 months exclusively nursing my baby, which will be a first for me. And yeah, so I just wanted to share that because we're trying to keep it real over here. And, we're kind of like some days we have it really together and other days we're the hot mess express. And I never want to give you guys the impression that I have it all figured out. Even when you know the right thing to do, like I always say, it can be really hard to actually execute and do the thing. I like to think, I've been practicing a really long time. So I have gotten, my skills have improved over the years. But, life is life and it likes to throw us curveballs. So, um, one other thing I wanted to say before we get into today's episode is I do love hearing from you guys. And if there's topics that you guys want me to cover on the podcast, whether you reach out via social media, email, comment below, I would love to cover topics that you guys are interested in because I know we have like a really faithful like following of people who I think tune in probably almost every week. So if there's a specific topic that you're interested in, I'm working on the next couple of months of like planning in regards to topics I want to cover. And I'd love to include those for you guys because really at the end of the day, like my whole goal here is to help you. So try to take any of those ways to reach out to me and let me know. And now the baby is stirring, guys. Let's see. He opened his eyes. This is not good. Okay, let's get into today's topic because I feel like we may be on borrowed time. Oh, there he is. Maybe I just need to give him his nookie. Please hold. I think that should borrow us some time. Okay, guys. Hot Mess Express over here. Okay, so today we're talking about something that I think most people, think they understand. I just want to hopefully maybe take it a little bit deeper for you. And that has to do with what happens when we eat food. Because I think this topic is really important because, I think most people make food choices based on calories, on trends, or maybe what they've been told is quote unquote healthy. But your body doesn't respond to food based on any of that. It doesn't care about how good the marketing is on the packaging, if it's looks green and, crunchy and clean. It responds based on how quickly that food is digested, how much it impacts blood sugar, how much insulin is released, and what hormonal environment that it creates. And if you don't understand, all of these pieces, you're going to constantly feel like maybe you're doing everything right, but nothing is working for you. Maybe you're hungry all the time and you have no idea why. Maybe you have no energy or you like have big energy crashes throughout the day. Or maybe it's something like you're craving sugar or carbs constantly. So today I'm going to break this down in a way, hopefully, that makes sense, and then bring some light to the topic so that as you go through your weeks, your days, your meals, you can feel informed, you can feel empowered to make really good decisions. Um, Before we get into the meat, as always, of this topic, though, I want to give you a quick reminder. I am not a medical doctor, and this is not medical advice. This podcast is for educational purposes only and is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure any diseases. Again, not medical advice. Um, Always consult with your doctor before making any big changes to your medical plan. Yeah, be smart, right, guys? We're all about that. And then lastly, before we get in, quick reminder, my online supplement store is officially open. If you haven't checked that out, head over to my website, www.hopeplacoaching.com. On top right corner of the homepage is a button for the store. You can click on that, and it will bring you right there. If you've been wanting high quality supplements, you can actually trust this is where to get them. Every product in the store is third-party tested for quality and purity, which unfortunately isn't something, that you're guaranteed when you're buying supplements from Amazon or maybe grabbing them wherever you do your shopping or your local health food store. So these supplements on my website, these are the same professional grade products that I use and I recommend to all my clients. And it's an easy way to support me and the Lifestyle School podcast because I don't get paid to do this. So, and there are overhead costs, unfortunately. So if you want to support the show, head over to my website, www.hopeplacoaching.com. Use the code 104567 to create an account. And then if you want to know exactly where to start when it comes to supplements, go listen to episode 43, where I talk through my core 4 supplement recommendations and why they matter for metabolic health. You guys, this baby is getting really squirmy. We're going to see how this goes. Okay. Also, I wanted to tell you guys, I am standing at a standing desk wearing him in a carrier. My desk is like as high as it can go because I'm 5'10". So I hope I'm going to try to talk clearly into the microphone, but guys, we're doing this. I am committed to getting this episode out to you guys on time on Friday. It's currently Wednesday, so I don't have a lot of time. Okay, let's start just talking with digestion. We're going to start with the cephalic phase. That's a fun word to say. I think most people think digestion starts when food hits your stomach, but it doesn't actually. And you guys, sorry, my baby is waking up. I'm going to pause you and we're going to, let me see how I can do this. Maybe he's not waking up. Oh, you guys, this is hard. Okay. Let's see if we can keep going. So most people think digestion starts when the food hits your stomach, but that's not actually the case. It starts when you, even before you take your first bite. It's called the cephalic phase, as I said, of digestion. And this actually happens when you see the food, when you're walking through the mall and you smell the food, or maybe even if you just think about the food, your body starts preparing for the food to come in and for digestion. Isn't that really cool? Your brain sends signals to your digestive system, and what starts to happen is saliva production increases, your stomach acid begins to release, and enzymes start getting ready for that digestive process. And this is why rushing through meals, eating distracted, or maybe even eating stressed actually impairs digestion because your body never fully shifts into that, quote, rest and digest phase that you hear people talking about, or that not phase state. And so right out of the gate, how you eat matters, not just what you eat. And that's why, it's really important to plate your meals, like sit down, take a deep breath, and then start to eat. And chew your food and eat slowly and, not rush your way through it. Like, if you're anything like me in the hardcore momming phase of life, you might find yourself doing, just like standing over the counter and shoving food in your face sometimes. It's not the right way. it should be a ritualized process. And I've gone through phases where I do a really good job of this, and currently I'm not in the best habit right now or phase. I would say it's hit or miss, everything is a little tipsy-turvy when you have a little baby. But that's why, this really matters. Put the phone down, turn it off, turn the TV off, sit down and like look at your food, chew it, think about how it tastes, if you enjoy it. And yeah, it's going to make a big difference. Now let's kind of shift and talk about the journey that the food takes as it goes through our body. How fun, right? Let's take this step by step. So, first step, you think about the food, and then next is what happens once it hits our mouth. So, digestion begins mechanically and chemically as soon as you start to chew your food. When you chew your food, you're breaking it down physically, but at that same time, like I kind of mentioned before, enzymes in your saliva begin breaking down carbohydrates. And this is why carbs are the fastest to digest. Um, Once food moves down your esophagus into your stomach, this is where protein digestion begins. Your stomach has acid, hydrochloric acid, and what that does is it breaks things down, and food is turned into a semi-liquid state. And this is also where a lot of people run into problems, unfortunately. So things like low stomach acid, I think we did a whole podcast episode on that, is going to result in poor digestion. And then that's going to result in bloating, discomfort, potentially nutrient deficiencies. Um, and this is another reason why, like, getting into that rest and digest phase really matters for eating our meals, because when we are stressed while eating, our body produces less stomach acid, because it takes a lot of energy for our body to produce adequate stomach acid, as well as like every year we get older, typically we produce less and less. But hydrochloric acid is a essential part of the digestion process, right from the start in the stomach. And then we move down into the small intestine, and this is where most of the magic happens. So enzymes from the pancreas and bile from the liver and gallbladder come in. Now your body starts breaking food into amino acids. That would be protein is broken into amino acids. Fat is digested into or broken down into fatty acids. And carbohydrates are broken down into glucose. And then absorbing them in the small intestine, they get absorbed back into the bloodstream. And from here, your body decides, is it going to use it and burn this food for energy right away? Is it going to store it? Are we going to spike our blood sugar? Are things going to stay stable? All of these happen in that small intestine phase. We're going to leave out the um, colon and excretion phase. Although one thing I will want to say, because I don't think we talk about bowel movements enough on this show, because they're really important. You should be having a bowel movement, guys, every single day, one, if not two times a day. You shouldn't probably regularly be having more than two a day. That's a sign of problems. And if you're not having at least one a day, that's also a sign of problems. They should be they should be sinkers, not floaters. Okay. And they should be formed, but not hard, and not in like small little pieces. Okay. I'll leave it at that, because I know some people get really weirded out and grossed out by talking about stool, but it is a really important sign of digestion. I actually had a conversation with someone close to me that as a child, they had really messed up digestion. They had, I think, chronic diarrhea, and they didn't, well, it wasn't like crazy diarrhea, but it was really loose stool. And they didn't realize that it was actually a problem until they got older, because no one had told them about it, right? And this person, to this day has some pretty intense digestive issues. And I think it's important for us as adults, to be educated on what our bowel movements should be like, but as well as our kids. Like I try to talk to my kids a bit, like and ask them about their bowel movements actually, because my kids are getting to the age where I'm no longer involved necessarily in their bathroom experience, other than like, did you wash your hands? Did you flush the toilet? And so making sure that they know what to look for so that they can have healthy digestion, we can know if they're having healthy digestion is so important. So I just wanted to like put that in there before we moved on to talking a little bit more in depth about protein. So I like to think about protein as like building blocks, right? Protein, is having its day right now, which I love. I think it's great. It's getting a lot of attention for good reason. But I think, there's still a lot of misunderstanding around it. So let's get into the digestion breakdown. We're going to keep it simple, but protein requires a significant effort to digest. It's very thermogenic, as one would say, where you expend a lot of energy, like you burn calories as you digest protein, and it starts in the stomach with acid and enzymes like pepsin, and then continues in the small intestine where it's broken down into amino acids. And we just did an episode on protein, so hopefully this is just review, but protein is essential for muscle repair and growth, right? It's really important for enzyme production, for hormone signaling, and our immune system function. So getting adequate protein is essential for our health. But another big one that I think is also really important to touch on is satiety. Protein helps you feel full. And I like to just, point this out that it stimulates hormones, protein does, like peptide YY and our natural GLP-1 production, because everyone's taking GLP-1s these days. And, you know, the good news is we have like our own GLP-1 and we want to promote the healthy signaling of that. Um, because these two hormones are very powerful and they signal to your brain that you've eaten enough, right? So if you're someone like me who feels sometimes like they can never eat enough food, insatiably hungry, and I'm not just saying that because like I just had a baby. I've like felt like that my whole life, long before I had kids. Um, Making sure we're stimulating these hormones are only going to help us on our journey, right? Because white knuckling it through feeling super hungry is not a solution to fixing the problem of overeating. But there is a drawback to protein, and this is where nuance matters, is that, protein is not metabolically neutral. If you eat more protein than your body needs, your body can convert that into glucose. This process, gluconeogenesis, can raise blood sugar, okay? And, this doesn't mean protein is bad by any means, okay? I'm not anti-protein at all. I am pro-protein. But what it does mean is that more is not always better, especially for someone who has insulin resistance. And this is why some people eating very high protein diets feel stuck in their weight loss, constantly hungry, because high insulin is going to make you constantly feel hungry, or you're not entering fully into fat burning mode. So there's nuance, right? We gotta do what works for you, not just what works for your favorite influencer on YouTube or Instagram or wherever you get your social media intake. And moving on to fat, I think this maybe is the most misunderstood macro. I feel like people don't talk about it that much. There's a lot of talk about carbs, a lot of talk about protein, but I think fat has been demonized for decades. I did like a whole episode just talking about fat. Um, and, I think because we don't understand fat, it can be a reason why people struggle. So let's break down digestion real quick. Fat is digested much slower than the other two macros, carbohydrates and protein. It relies on bile from the liver and the gallbladder to break it down into usable fatty acids. So if you don't have a gallbladder, a lot of people really struggle to digest fats. Your liver can take over time, but usually it takes, like supplementing with some help until your liver is able to start producing enough bile to be able to digest these fats more readily and without as much issue. And the beautiful thing about fat digestion is that it's slower and it's more controlled. And fat is incredibly powerful for stabilizing energy, not spiking blood sugar. It's really, really important for hormone production, for our brain health, for our satiety. And fat also slows gastric emptying, similar to protein, which means food stays in your stomach longer. And what that translates to is you stay full longer and energy is more sustainable. But here is the catch. And I think this is the part that I think a lot of people struggle with and maybe don't understand. That fat is easily stored in your body if it's still running on glucose, okay? So if you're going to be a high fat intake person, you have to be a fat burner. You can't be running off glucose. Because if insulin is high, your body is in storage mode and uh, fat is then going to be more easily stored if insulin is high. So adding fat on top of high carb or high insulin meals is going to be where people run into trouble with fat loss. So keeping that in mind, you can be high fat or you can be high carb. You cannot be both. Okay. And then, when I'm telling people to, eat I don't like to give people meal plans. I say build your plate around protein, fat, and then fiber. And, fiber, there's a lot of really strong opinions about fiber on the internet. Some people, are pro a ton of fiber, some people are not. And with fiber, I will say, based on my clinical experience, some people do really well with a lot of fiber. They feel really good, and other people don't, right? So I think the source of the fiber does matter. If you're eating fiber one bars, that's different than if you're eating, things like cooked vegetables. But when it comes to fiber, I want to just first say, do what works for your body, right? Just because I say fiber is good doesn't necessarily mean it's good for you right now, or vice versa. Maybe you should be doing fiber and you're not. So fiber is one of, these potentially really powerful tools for metabolic health. And most people aren't getting from dietary guidelines, which, we can feel all sorts of way about, they're not getting the recommended amount of fiber, which I think is about 35 to 50 grams a day. And this is like the thing that makes fiber unique is that your body doesn't fully digest fiber. It slows digestion. Fiber feeds your gut bacteria. So, if you've had some dysbiosis in your gut bacteria where, maybe you have more bad bugs than good bugs, or you've been on antibiotics a lot, fiber can be really helpful. It's like a prebiotic for gut bacteria. And it has the potential to improve insulin sensitivity. And then one other thing for women specifically is that fiber, well, even men, because men struggle with high estrogen, but having enough fiber helps you digest, or I should say digest, that's the wrong word. It helps you clear estrogen, the estrogen hormones, as you go through the phases of your cycle. So being mindful of that, I think, is really important. And one thing, though, I want to talk about is that fiber acts like a buffer when it comes to your blood sugar. So if you eat carbs alone, you're going to have a really fast spike. And sometimes, regardless, depending on, your unique health history and metabolic health, maybe no matter what you eat when it comes to carbs, you're going to have a fast spike. But if you eat carbs with fiber, typically you're going to have a slower, more controlled release of that glucose or that sugar, which is going to result in a slower increase in blood sugar and then a slower decrease. So you're not having these big peaks and valleys in your blood sugar. And keeping you off that blood sugar roller coaster, because spikes and crashes of blood sugar are really huge drivers of cravings and metabolic dysfunction. And this is like one of the simplest ways to really help stabilize blood sugar without eliminating foods entirely. You may be someone who needs to eliminate some foods entirely, maybe. I can't speak to your specific situation, but I want you to know fiber does act like a buffer and it may be all you need. And so use it as a tool in your toolbox to troubleshoot what's going to work for you specifically. Um, I talked about this a little bit, but fiber feeds beneficial bacteria in your gut. And these bacteria produce compounds like short chain fatty acids that do things like reduce inflammation, improve metabolic health, and support your hormone balance. I mentioned estrogen. And so, um, I think it's really easy when it comes to nutrition. Like people love to deal in extremes on the internet. And so anytime you hear someone being like, fiber is bad for everyone, or um, everyone should have, a ton of fiber and are like being fear mongers about it, I would say that should always be a red flag because I've come across people who do really, really well with fiber and others who don't. So, that's what I'll leave it at that. And if you have more questions or if you feel like you need some help navigating this, that's what my one-on-one coaching program is all about. Moving on to carbohydrates, guys. My baby is still sleeping. I'm rocking back and forth. Hopefully you can't tell that with the microphone, but we're doing this. We're in this together. Let's talk about carbohydrates, though. Um, because I feel like this can be an emotional conversation. And honestly, I feel like my own relationship with carbs has been an emotional conversation, as I've realized that like my body just doesn't do well with carbohydrates, but I want to eat them because they taste good, right? Um, so let's get one thing clear, when it comes to carbs. All carbohydrates break down into glucose, full stop. But the key piece of this that matters is that the speed of that breakdown into glucose is what really makes the difference. Again, we're talking about that blood sugar roller coaster. I think one of the first episodes I did was about getting off the blood sugar roller coaster. Maybe it's time to revisit. We're already like 69 episodes in. But that speed really matters because, again, we're not going for the peaks and valleys when it comes to our blood sugar. We want stable rolling hills throughout the day because that's going to help us feel our best. Simple carbs, think fast and problematic. They're rapidly digested. Examples of this would be things like sugar, juice, white breads, processed snacks. What they do is they cause these big blood sugar spikes that happen really fast. So our pancreas has to release a huge bolus of insulin, and then that pulls then all that sugar out of our bloodstream really quick, and then our blood sugar usually crosses lower than it was before the spike started, leaving us feeling hungry with really low energy and a bunch of cravings for more food, which usually then propels us on to the roller coaster again, eating, grabbing another high sugar, high carb snack. It's awful. And I know we've all been there. I recently had a donut and I was like, whoa, this put me on the blood sugar roller coaster. The gluten-free donut tasted wonderful, but I was like, you know what? I should not be doing this. And I did go to the gym after, which, helps mobilize the glucose, but still, it's not something we want to be subjecting our body to frequently, if ever, right? Um, Again, guys, just as a reminder, I'm not perfect. I'm on this journey too, and some days are going to be better than others. So have some grace for yourself. And this process is about growth and, the journey. It's not about perfection. And that's why I share the fact that I had a donut last week. It was why did I have a donut? Oh, yeah, my German sister really wanted to go to this like really hole in the wall donut place by one of our old houses that we lived in here in the Bay Area. And so we went and I was like, should I get one? And I did. And it was really great. And I enjoyed it. We went to the gym later that day and we moved on with life. It doesn't have like eating a donut doesn't have to um, mean you're totally done with your diet or your good intentions or your um, your healthy way of life, right? It's just something you do and you enjoy and you move on. And you take into account how you felt while you did it. Anyway, random tangent. I'll get back to my actual content here because this baby is squirming. Okay, so let's talk complex carbs real quick. Think of them as slower plus more stable. These contain fiber typically, and they take longer to digest. So examples would be things like vegetables, whole fruits, legumes. And what happens is, they create that slower glucose release, which results in better satiety and then a more stable energy. You don't have that big spike, so then you don't have the big crash. And here's, I think, what most people need to hear. And I kind of alluded to this, but all carbs, even healthy carbs, can spike blood sugar, unfortunately. And this is where I think things get emotional for people. Even if you're insulin resistant, if you eat carbs by themselves, maybe not broccoli, but or if a portion is too large, healthy carbs can spike blood sugar. And yeah, that's just like the reality of the matter. So again, context matters. Your personal metabolic health matters is a part of this equation. And so you have to take stock of what has happened in my body? How do I feel? And, can carbs outside of, maybe uh, high fibrous vegetables be a part of my food choices as I'm trying to work towards better metabolic health? Okay, let's move on talking about the combination protein, fat, and fiber and why they work so well. And hopefully now you can see why I teach building meals around these three macros because you're stacking the deck hopefully in your favor, right? With these three. Protein signals fullness, your fat stabilizes energy. I should say the fat on your plate stabilizes energy, and then fiber slows absorption. So together, what they're doing is these foods are preventing spikes and crashes in your blood sugar. They're keeping you feeling satisfied longer. They're reducing your cravings and they're improving your metabolic health. And this isn't just like dieting rules. This is like how your body is meant to work. It's your physiology, right? And that's we want to be working with our bodies and not against them. And that's why, you're always going to hear me say protein, fat, and fiber on your plate, create your meals, kind of around these three macros. And the quantity is going to differ based on you, your goals, your physiology, your labs, and what makes you feel really good. Because at the end of the day, you're the only person who lives in your own skin. So let's talk about real life application real quick. Let's make this real because most people, I think they start their day with coffee and maybe something quick and carb heavy, which leads to mid-morning crash and cravings. And then you feel like, oh, I need more caffeine. Instead of, starting their day with something like protein, fat, and fiber at breakfast, which is, think like eggs with maybe some vegetables and then your coffee, which is going to make you feel like you have stable energy. Your focus is going to be better. You're going to feel less hungry. And they could even be the exact same calories, but you're going to have completely different outcomes. And you guys, I see this over and over and over again with my nutrition clients that I work one-on-one with. So, as you move into this week, I want you to know your body is incredibly intelligent. It's always responding appropriately to what you give it, right? So if you constantly spike your blood sugar, your body's going to constantly produce insulin. If you stabilize your blood sugar, your body will shift towards balance. And as always, guys, reminder, this isn't about perfection. This is a journey. Like there's no end date. This isn't a diet. This is like this journey ends when we die, right? We're always pursuing health, feeling our best, a healthy weight so that we can live the life that we want, not hindered by our health and our energy. It's about understanding, how our body works so that we can make better decisions from that place. And I hope this episode did that for you a little bit today. So, you guys, if this episode gave you a new perspective at all on digestion, I would love for you to leave a review, subscribe to the podcast, share this episode with someone who needs to hear it. Again, that's the best way that you can help me get the word out about this podcast. I'm awful at getting on social media these days, other than a quick, I rolled into the gas station this week with zero miles worth of gas in my tank. That actually did happen. I posted about it. It was like, I'm living on the edge, but I need to get back on social media to promote this podcast. But in the meantime, can you guys help me out and share it with some friends? Maybe share it on your Instagram. I would love that. That would totally rock my socks off if I saw someone share this on their social media. And let's see here. If you're ready to stop guessing and maybe start building a lifestyle that actually works for you, to achieve your best health, and a healthy weight, come join me inside the Lifestyle School for Weight Loss, the course, or I should say, apply for one-on-one coaching, where we can make this personalized to your goals and needs. Guys, we made it through this episode. The baby is still sleeping. He's gotten a little squirmy. I don't know if you can tell when I'm like aggressively rocking back and forth, but we made it. This is amazing. You guys, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for your time. Would love to hear from you. Any ideas for upcoming episodes as I do planning for the next couple months? With that, we will see you on the next episode of the Lifestyle School podcast. Take care, guys.